Grand Theft Auto has endured tens of years and hundreds of controversies, and somehow managed to come out on top as one of the highest-selling franchises in all of gaming. Rockstar's GTA 5 might just be the most enduring classic they've ever created, and it's all thanks to a handful of stubborn, persistent, passionate people. Let's talk about why Grand Theft Auto won't die. Back in the 90s, a game called Race and Chase was being developed by a tiny British dev team named DMA Design. Eventually, game publisher BMG Interactive and particularly BMG executive Dan Houser would take notice of the game and sign over the IP and the dev team to BMG Interactive. Their first order of business was a name change. Race and Chase would become Grand Theft Auto, and it would release in October of 1997. It's hard to believe that this is where the story of GTA started. It's almost unrecognizable. But once you actually play the game, it becomes clear that Grand Theft Auto has always had a very distinct style. Though it's a top-down game, players take control of a criminal whose whole job is to sow chaos on the streets, which is still the GTA formula today. Sadly, it wasn't particularly well received by critics. In addition to dated graphics and careless design, the violence was intense and scandalous. Even in its most archaic state, people were up in arms over the sorts of activities GTA let players get away with. Mowing down pedestrians and getting in purposeful car crashes was enough for people to call for its condemnation. But obviously there was a market for senseless destruction because it was the highest-selling game of the year in the UK, and so a sequel was greenlit. But before GTA 2 would come out, BMG was bought out by Take-Two Interactive in 1998. Most of the staff was let go and several IPs were sold off. Dan Houser apparently managed to talk his way out of being fired, so he remained. So did Grand Theft Auto and the DMA design team. Houser would form a new company under Take-Two called Rockstar Games, and DMA would become Rockstar North. This was the beginning of a legendary studio that would go on to make some of the most memorable and incredible games to date. So what was their move? How about that sequel to the highest-selling game of the year? So Rockstar North was tasked with continuing their legacy under a new name. And it bombed. 1999's GTA 2 was mostly passed over by critics and players. With a dev team made up of largely the same people from the first game, you'd think the sequel would be an easy hit, but the general consensus was that GTA 2 was boring. A mistake that Dan Houser, Rockstar Games, and the developers of Rockstar North would never make again. They weren't ready to give up. This was a new studio that still had to prove that it had a right to exist after all, and they knew that GTA still had some gas in the tank. While GTA 2 was set in a bizarre retro future that hasn't been revisited in the series since, the first GTA took place in 3 cities: Liberty City, Vice City, and San Andreas. Those names are probably familiar to most of you because they all end up as both the settings and titles for future GTA releases. Liberty City had the honor of being the setting of the first 3D Grand Theft Auto, which marked a turning point for the series and would launch it into proper stardom. 2001's Grand Theft Auto 3 was a hit in every sense of the word. It switched from a fully top-down arcadey style to a mostly third-person 3D perspective, was praised by critics as a technological marvel. Its open world was groundbreaking in its immensity and detail, its graphics at the time were incredible. The story was just the right mix between gritty realism and cartoony mischief, but the real star of the show was the all-out rated M chaos. Thanks to the new PlayStation 2 hardware, Rockstar North was able to turn the weapon-wielding, car-stealing, hyper-violence up to 11. This, of course, was an extremely risky move on the part of the developers. Some critics would go on to award GTA 3 the title of Most Offensive Game of the Year and keep the debate about video games and violence raging for years to come.
Announced by Congress here in the U.S., the game has been outlawed in Australia, and several other countries are also considering bans.
But despite the controversy, the decision to commit to their violent vision ended up paying off. Dan Houser and Rockstar North were looking at a massive financial success. GTA 3 came out at a strange time in American history, with a release date only a little more than a month after the attacks in New York on September 11th. America was processing the event, and a good chunk of people turned to absurdist pieces of violent art like the GTA games as a way to cope. But this obviously stirred up fresh controversy. Liberty City was always intended to play off of New York, and some critics believed it was at best insensitive and at worst an attempt to incite further attacks on the American city. Only after playing the game would people realize how well crafted it was from a story and mechanic standpoint, and it made lifelong fans out of a not insignificant number of people originally just looking for an outlet. So GTA 3 ended up as the best-selling game of 2001, and was only beat out by its own sequel, Grand Theft Auto Vice City, the following year. This would be looked back on as the start of the Grand Theft Auto era. Once again, Rockstar North navigated through the muddy waters of controversy and proved that there is a market for hyper-violent, destructive games. The GTA era would be recognized by the classic chaotic evil nature of the series. It's what the games are most known for decades later, and that's because no other game or franchise has been able to match the outrageous tone of Grand Theft Auto. Sure, some good stories have been told, some boundaries have been broken, but the biggest gift Rockstar and Grand Theft Auto gave to us was the ability to do ridiculous nonsense. Rockstar knew this and would only go further with the chaos in the future.
You down to represent, baby?
Yeah.
And by the time Grand Theft Auto San Andreas rolled around, even the critics were starting to get behind the hype. Then, in the midst of all this hype, the greatest addition to the GTA series was born: online mode. Grand Theft Auto 4 released in 2008 to incredible reviews and showers of money. For the first time in series history, players weren't experiencing the chaos alone. A series that had become an outlet for people to exercise their worst impulses in a virtual space was now officially multiplayer, and it had an odd effect on the game dynamic. Now, it wasn't the first game to have an online option, obviously, but GTA 4's online mode offered a kind of freedom that other games at the time didn't. A strange bond formed around the community based on a mutual understanding that this world was meant to be ruined. It was absolute chaos, and it was incredibly well received. So, of course, Rockstar North did what they do best when it came time to work on the next game in the series. They amped up the chaos. Grand Theft Auto 5 was released in September of 2013 and is, at the time of recording, the latest main game in the GTA series. To say GTA 5 was successful is maybe the biggest understatement made in the almost 9 years since the game came out. It was bigger, better, more graphically impressive, and more packed full of nonsense than any of the games to come before. It single-handedly rocketed GTA into the running for the best-selling franchise of all time. It made over $815 million worldwide within 24 hours of its release date. Game critics were universally in love, while non-gaming critics were universally appalled, continuing the grand tradition of GTA controversies. With the game looking and feeling more realistic than ever, a whole new generation of parents were outraged to find that the rated M video game they purchased for their child was full to the brim with mature content. At this point, Rockstar North had these games down to a science. They knew exactly which buttons to push and how far to push them. And they had a strict understanding of what their player base wanted out of a GTA game. So imagine the hype surrounding GTA 5's online mode, which was officially released a month later. It was big, it was epic, it was actually pretty broken. Luckily, the early annoyances weren't enough to sink the ship. Nothing was going to stop GTA 5 Online from becoming the absolute behemoth it is today. Originally just a sandbox of up to 30 people spread out across the map, GTA Online eventually became much more than that. With heist gameplay, the ability to create some wild player-made levels, and total freedom to leave carnage in your wake. It's an ecosystem of players that is honestly worth studying. It's an environment only Rockstar has been able to foster in their games, and it is a secret formula to their long life. It is the lasting legacy of the series, and that's because the GTA devs, and specifically Rockstar North, have been creating this community and brand since the 90s, since before Rockstar even existed. Through all this history and controversy, the devs refused to bow down to external pressures because they saw what was missing from the industry. People needed a space to play out their weirdest, funniest, friendliest, and most disturbing fantasies in the safety of a non-judgmental sandbox. And it's all happening in a game from a series that's been built by a single dev team over multiple decades of hard work and love. That's what makes Rockstar North so special. Their passion, dedication, and solid understanding of their audience is the reason why Grand Theft Auto won't die. And that's all we have for this episode. Make sure to like and subscribe for episodes from all of us here at Nerdstalgic Gaming. Thanks for watching.